Alright, we are going to start with the assignment from last class. Last class. If you did the assignment, let me see your hand. Raise your hand if you did the assignment. Or raise your hand if you did not do the assignment. Let me change it. Okay, Mr. English, were you there in the previous class?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. What about the first
But
one?
the point was that I was thinking that you, after this, maybe after the lessons, you'll be having some recording about the sessions, and then I'll be able to follow from there. Or I was also willing to have a session at midnight, but it didn't happen that way.
The recording was supposed to be made available, but there was an error while recording and the sound was not there. That's why it was not made available. So, but this time that will be corrected.
Okay, so I think it would be great if it's done because I'm not mostly available at 7 p.m. or LMC every day,
Yeah.
and internet connection too.
Okay. Okay. So the other ones who did not raise their hands means they did the assignment. Because if you raise your hand if you did not do it. Okay. If you did it, can you kindly present what you did? Let me see. Let us see. Um, okay, okay. Can you send it in the group in the WhatsApp group? Because like this, I'm not really seeing clearly. Or either you share your screen or you send it in the WhatsApp group. Because like this, I'm not really seeing. Faith, what's the update? Okay, okay. I'm seeing your screen now. See your screen. Okay. What was the design brief again? You asked to design a restaurant flyer for. You have to design a restaurant flyer for a fictional restaurant. That was it, right? Okay, so let's see your flyer. Where Cameroon comes to chop. Maybe for one, free drinks for 1 week. Are you going to cope with free drinks for 1 week? So we're not going to close down. Okay, Yomi. Is it possible you send this uh, design in the group? Okay, right. You can share your screen before you send it. When you're joining like the meeting with your phone and your laptop on your phone, you can simply mute remove the sound on your phone to avoid the echo. Yes, send it to the group. Send it to the group. So I'm going to open it. I want to open it here on my machine now. We're going to review it together. Open it on my machine and share the screen. We're going to review it together, and I'm going to give you the review of your design. Or anyways, we're also going to do it like this. Maybe it's going to take time before you can send it. Just keep sharing your screen, and we're going to do it like this. Okay. All right. So first things first. Let me ask you a question. Why did you choose green? Was there any reason for your choosing of the green color? Was there any reason to your choosing of the green color? Wait, are you hearing me? Hey, I was saying that we're going to review it like this. As you're presenting your screen, let's review it.
So I should stop sharing.
Kevin, since you design your Photoshop, let's review it. That's what I said. That's what I'm saying. I was first thing I asked you was why the green color? Why choose green? Was there any reason for your choosing of green, or was just like that?
Because Cameroonian original.
Wait, when you're joining with your phone and your laptop at the same time, mute your phone. On your phone, on the top right corner of your phone, in the top right corner of your phone, you see the option to mute your phone, so that when you're speaking, the echo will not be there. Okay, you choose green because it's Cameroonian dishes. It's Cameroonian dishes, a Cameroonian restaurant. Cameroonian restaurant. And notice down here, okay, down on the bottom left, yeah, this red on this green, on this green. So last we spoke about color theory, right? About matching of color. So you notice that the contrast of this green, of this red and this green, isn't really matching. It's too striking, and then black on top of it again. And one other thing too is the circles, right? These circles, were they intentionally made to be oval, or were they intentionally made to be oval? Okay, you didn't want them to be perfectly circular. That's what I'm getting. You intentionally made them to be oval, right? Okay. The images, where did you get the images from? The fake images, where did you get them from? Yeah, I know it's online. I'm saying like where exactly online? Okay, from iStock. So did you screenshot because iStock is a paid, it's a paid, so you just screenshot it. Okay. So one thing is, okay, you right click it as I click and hit save as. uh But when you do that, the image comes in a lower quality. That is one of the disadvantage. And another thing is, iStock is paid, so normally you don't have the right to be downloading images from iStock if you're not on the paid plan. So another well, the thing is you're in Cameroon, so nobody really cares. But the main problem is the quality. Since you're downloading like that, the quality will be low. It will be low. So I gave you some websites the last time. I gave you Pexels, though you might not find Cameroonian dishes on this site. I gave you Pexels.com. I gave you Pixabay.com. I gave you Freepik.com. But there's also this one. Pinterest. Do you know about Pinterest? Pinterest.com. Pinterest. I think is that how they spell it? Pinterest.com. So you can go in your browser now and type Pinterest.com and go to Pinterest.com on your browser. Search for Pinterest or just even leave it. Let's just continue with this. Another thing on the image too is this image that you put on the background. You lower the opacity. Lower the opacity. But however, the visual is not how will I say catchy. One thing about design is, as I said last time, your design has to be visually appealing, right? It's not just also about putting images and text together, but in terms of it being appealing, right? It has to be appealing. It has to make somebody who is scrolling down, maybe WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram, stop at the design, not to check what it's actually about. So in terms of the appealingness is quite quite low. The matching of colors as well. The green on the red on the green wasn't the best option. And your caption kind of disappears in the design where Cameroon come feature. This your caption is supposed to be striking, but it's very small. Your caption is very small and kind of gets missing in the design. And one other thing too is spacing at the borders. At the borders, you should also try to endeavor to keep some spacing at your borders. In terms of layout, it makes it more visually appealing when you keep some spacing at your borders. And then this white space at the bottom, was it intentional? This white space at the bottom here is part of the design. Okay, yes, part of the design. It's part of the design. But however, just an empty white space over there doesn't really add anything to this design. This empty white space which is at the bottom. In my opinion, it would have even been better without the empty white space. The empty white space would have been more relevant if you added some text there. For example, this contact information. If it was there, then okay, it would have been more relevant. But just adding a blank white space at the bottom has it doesn't add to the appealingness of design. It doesn't serve a particular purpose in the design. So every single thing you add onto your design has to serve a purpose. If there's something that does not serve a purpose, then it has to be removed. But this was actually great. Thank you for actually doing the assignment. Actually doing the assignment. And the point of this is, by the time we get to the end, right? By the time you get from this is the first day, this is the end of the first day. By the time you get to the end of the last week, you're able to see your progress by yourself. When you look at this design, so make sure you save this design. When you look at this and you look at the design after the 6 weeks, then you will know how much distance you must have covered. Yeah. All right, thank you. You can stop sharing the screen. Is there any other person who did and wants to show us, present to us what he did? If not, we'll move on with what we do for today. Okay, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share my screen first. Let me share my screen. So, in a quick overview of what we saw last class, uh, last class we looked at basic principles in design. We spoke about color theory. We spoke about layout. We spoke about typography. We talk about images. So, for example, on page design, you could see she added some images, she used some fonts, she added colors, and she arranged them in a particular way. That's what we speak about. So, we saw the basics, the introduction, right? When it comes to theory, color theory, we saw that not all colors match or can be used together. While using colors, you have to create some sort of contrast between the colors for them to match each other. A dark color, two dark colors cannot match, whereas two bright colors cannot match. So you have to verify there has to be a difference in the contrast for two colors to be able to match to create a visually appealing design. Let's talk about layout. Layout is all about organization, how everything is put together on your design. Where you put your heading, where you put your images, where you put your footer, where you put your caption, where you put your logo. All of this has to do with layout. Layout has to create a sort of balance on your screen, a sort of visual hierarchy. So your layout guides the user as he look at your design. So uh, for example, in this design, when this is something the basic which you did last week when we were explaining. When a user will see this thing, the first text which is going to read, what will it be? Is it going to be this one or this one? It's certainly going to be this one and not this. Why? Because of the size. Because one is bigger than this one therefore becomes more uh, striking than this. So you want to make your caption or your heading the biggest text found on your design. It has to be the biggest. That's the first thing the user has to see. Another example maybe can be on this. For example, this right here is the header. So it has to be this striking. When somebody looks at this is the first thing that should strike him. Now this creates nice visual hierarchy because now if he reads this, what the next thing he's going to look at is this and is this. Then he's going to come to this. So you're trying to create a flow, and that's what layout does. So when you're designing your flyer or your whatever you're designing, always think about the experience, right? as the user. The user is going to see what the first thing is going to see, what the next thing is going to see. What are you trying to guide him to? So all those things are important. We also spoke about imaging, right? An image conveys a lot. You can say an image speaks without words, it speaks without text. It speaks without text. So, for example, uh, a restaurant, for example, take an example of a restaurant, and just like on that player click design, she used images of certain foods. So even without writing the name of the food outright, when somebody sees those images, the first thing that comes to his mind is this has to do with something of a restaurant. Even without seeing restaurant written anywhere, even without seeing the name of the food written everywhere, just by seeing those foods placed there, he knows he has to do something about restaurant. So that's how images communicate without words. So choosing your images, you have to be very meticulous in how you choose your image because your image communicates. You cannot be making, for example, uh, a flyer for a restaurant, for example, and you're putting, let me say what, a businessman in his suit on the flyer for a restaurant. It doesn't really matches. It doesn't, when somebody sees the restaurant, it doesn't really portray the image of, okay, I want to go and eat. It doesn't give that feeling. So if you're putting an image, a flyer, for example, for a restaurant, everything on that flyer should make somebody hungry, want to eat. From the colors, the text, the images should guide that. So if you were designing a flyer for a restaurant and you took an image like this, it doesn't really match the purpose. This is more of a business kind of image. You could use it on a business flyer, but however, on a restaurant flyer, it's kind of off. So when you're using your image, you have to think of purpose. What is it you want to convey with that image? And what was the last one? So spoke about images, spoke about layouts, spoke about colors, and typography. Typography. Typography is also very important in design as all the other elements. All the other elements. We took an example last class with luxurious brands, for example. We went online. Let's just look for some luxurious logos. So, yeah. If you look at these logos, you see one thing in common amongst these logos. Is that the font type they have the size of the text of the font are tiny, if you've noticed. And you mostly find this on fashion brands, on salons, on clothing brands, jewelry brands. So this really text, tiny size of text gives a more luxurious feeling than text with a very bold font. The text with a very bold font. So the type of text which you use also communicates. It has a feeling to it. If you look at, for example, restaurant logos, you might see restaurants. You see the difference in type of font which are being used here. Here you're not seeing those tiny fonts You're seeing fonts with rounded edges, which are softer. You're seeing watermarks. We'll look at this more, we'll be treating logos. So for now, we're just going to go over it like this, and we'll come back to when we'll be treating logo design. So, and the assignment was to create that restaurant flyer design. Restaurant flyer design. So for those who did, I'm sure they must have learned a lot while doing that, and they're going to learn even more as they proceed. So let's dive into lesson two. And lesson two, we're talking about some basic photo editing in Photoshop. Photo editing in Photoshop, and here the lesson outline will be understanding image types and resolution, working with layers, basic photo editing tools such as the crop tool, adjustment tools, which includes brightness, contrast, hue, the spot healing and clone stamp tools, and so we're going to have a practice session on how to use those tools. The objectives here is by the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand raster image formats and resolution, use Photoshop layers effectively, perform basic photo editing operations, and apply common corrections to enhance image quality. So the first one we look at is raster versus vector images. If you've never heard of raster images are made up of pixels. In the previous class, I told you that pixels are small boxes of color on your screen. So your screen sizes are measured in pixels. In pixels. So for example, if you're used to downloading movies, for example, on the internet, you will see movies in 260 pixels, 180 pixels, 220 pixels, 1080 pixels, 4K, 4000 pixels. So this simply means that what? Means that from the from this point, right, from the leftmost point to the rightmost point of your screen. For example, if it was a 360 pixels, it means that from this point to this point, that 360 boxes of color from this point to this point. If it was 480, it means that 480 pixels from here to here. If it was 720, that's 720 pixels. So what you're noticing is that what, as the pixel size is increasing, as the size is increasing, the quality is getting better. Why the quality getting better? Because the sizes of pixels are smaller, and because they are smaller, they can contain a very small fraction of the color, which will add more detail to the picture. So if you take for example a 260 pixels film and put it on your large screen in your parlor, so the quality will be very low because your screen being very large, your screen can take a very large amount of pixels. But however, that 360 pixel image only has 260 pixels, so it has to stretch out, making the pixel sizes to contain more color than it should, reducing the quality. However, when you increase the quality 480, 720, 1080, the image quality gets better because what? A smaller portion of the screen is used to represent one color. I don't know if you are getting this. If it's not clear, you can go over it again. If it's clear, you can send a reaction. So let's know on the same page. Okay, why in these situations, examples of raster images are JPEG and PNG. These are file extensions. File extensions. There are other file extensions apart from this. These are the main ones. Raster images are good for photographs and detailed visuals. The other form of image is the vector images. So two types of images, vector and raster. So the raster images are made up of paths and points. They're made up of paths and points. We're going to look more into vector images when we start doing Illustrator. Now, Photoshop is a raster tool. It's a raster tool made for raster editing. I mean, editing of pictures, right? But however, Illustrator is a vector tool. So it being a vector tool means it's very suitable for drawing, for illustration, right? From the name Illustrator. So it being suitable for drawings makes it very suitable for logos. Why? Because vector graphics are highly scalable. They're highly scalable because they do not lose quality when you increase the size. We take the example with 360 pixels uh, films or images on a large screen. So you put a 360 pixels film on a large TV, the pixels are being stretched out and the quality reduces. However, with vector graphics, no matter how you stretch the image, the quality does not reduce. Quality stays the same. That's why it is used for logos, things like logos and illustrations. So Photoshop is best for raster editing, while Illustrator is best for vector editing. Now, understanding resolution. So resolution is what makes your image to look sharp. So on this screen, you can see the difference between these two images. See, the first one is like kind of blurry, while the other one is very sharp. The difference between these two images are the resolutions. The one which looks blurry has a very low resolution, while the one which looks very sharp has a high resolution. So on your Photoshop, when you're exporting, you do something as DPI. DPI means dots per inch. Remember, these dots are what we call the pixels, right? These dots, the pixels. These dots contains one color. So dots per inch means that is the size of that particular pixel. So with a low quality, one dot or one pixel occupies a larger part of your screen in a low quality. And because it occupies a larger part of your screen, it makes it to be look less sharper because you have less detail, look less sharper and causes blurry effect. So the two main types is there's a 72 dpi which is used for screens, which is recommended for screens, and 300 dpi which is recommended for prints. So if you want to print your design, you want to increase the resolution for it to come out in the best quality. Whereas if it is for screens, you can maintain it at 32 dpi dots per inch for screens when putting your resolution. So the image size is simply the width times the height in pixels. So we saw how to add a file, create a new file in Photoshop. And when we're creating a file, we inputted the width of the file and the height of the file. So that width times that height gives the image size. Is everything clear so far? Is clear, send a reaction. If not, you can send your questions in the chat. Okay, let's continue. So next we're going to look at is your the layers panel. So if you've been following the course from the first day, then you should have heard of the layers panel. Or if you're not new to Photoshop, then you should have heard of the layers panel. The layers panel is simply where you organize all the resources you find on your canvas, and it lets you work non-destructively on your canvas. It means that every element is a layer with every element being a layer on its own, you can simply add or remove an element without impacting the other elements. So layers stack on your design on your canvas as pieces of papers. So you can think of layers as transparent sheets stacked on top of each other. So for example, you have like if you have like a bunch of 10 A4 papers, A4 papers stacked upon each other, and each of these papers contains something. One can contain an image, the other one can contain a shape, the other one can contain a text. So it's the combination of all these layers that make up your design. So the different types of layers are image layers that contain images, adjustment layers for effects, and text layers. So let's look at this on Photoshop. So this is my layers panel right here. This is my layers panel, and so you can see the amount of layers which are involved just in this simple design. This, for example, here is a text layer. This one is a text layer, so you can turn it off or on. It's a text layer. This one right here is an image. This one's an image. This man is an image layer. Even this coin at the back and this coin over here, they're all image layers. They're all image layers. Even this coin here is an image layer. This coin is an image layer, which you can turn it off or turn it on to either add or remove it. This is an image layer. So what's an adjustment layer? Let me show you an adjustment layer. Like for example, an example in this case here would be this. This is an adjustment layer. So if you turn this off, let's turn it off. Okay, let's just add another adjustment layer. So if you come down here, let's just say, okay, let me just look at another one down here. Okay, this is another adjustment layer. This one, for example, let's turn it on. Okay, so let's add a new one. Let's add a new adjustment layer. So you can add an adjustment layer by, for example, coming down here, let's just say brightness and contrast. So if we increase its brightness, say affects the entire design, or reduce it, same with the contrast, increase the contrast or reduce it, and say affects the design here. So this created, so as I selected brightness and contrast here, it created a new layer, a new layer panel, a new layer on my layers panel, which can affect my design. So the setting which I add this brightness and saturation changes how my design looks. So these are the different types of layers which you have, and we'll look at them more detail as we continue in this course. So why do we use layers? We use layers to organize our content in our design. So cropping and straightening, the crop tool. The crop tool removes unwanted areas in our image. I think all of us know what crop tool is. I guess some of us should have at least cropped an image once at some point in our life using our phones. So cropping usually simply helps you to remove unwanted areas in your image. You can use the rule of thirds grids for better framing, rotate or straighten images during cropping, and correct the aspect ratio. The different types of aspect ratio, the 1:1. 1:1 simply means that the height and the width are the same. 16:9 An example 16 to 9 is this screen, the laptop screens, right? Or your phone screens in landscape view at the 16 to 9 aspect ratio. 16 here being the width and 9 being the height. Another aspect ratio is the 4 is to 5, which is the portrait mode. The 4 is to 5. Simply means with a width of 4 and a height of 5. These are aspect ratios. So let's actually use the crop tool. Let's add an image to our, okay, let me just send you a link so you can, a Google Drive link where these images are stored. Okay, this call is going to end in 13 minutes. So when it ends, I'll create a new call and send it to the group where you just click and join back. So when the call ends in 12 minutes, don't be surprised. Use in 12 minutes simply because you have when you're using the free plan on Google Meet, you have only 1 hour window. So when the call ends, you're obliged to create a new link and send. So let me forward the link here. So this is a link to Google Drive where the image we'll be using for this section will be stored. So you can come here and download images from here. Okay, we're going to be working with this image. Going to be working with this image. So look at this image and download it. It's in the link I just sent to you. So once you download it, you can head to your Photoshop. Open your downloads folder where the image is stored and simply drag it and drop it here on the bar up here. And there you have it, your image has been opened. Have you been able to access the link? So do you have the picture already? Do you have the picture? If you have the picture, send a reaction. If you have the picture already. Okay. So look of the crop tool. This is where the crop tool is found, just here on your tools panel, just down here. So you click on the crop tool, you see that this appears, these borders here appear. So if you take your mouse and bring it to any of these borders, the cursor is going to change. The cursor changes. And you can click and drag in order to adjust your picture in the frame. using your crop tool. So when you use your crop tool, so this grid appears here. This is what you call the rule of thirds. Grid. Why is it called the rule of thirds? Because what? It divides your screen into three rows, and three columns. That's why it's called the rule of thirds. So you can simply arrange it the size you want, and once you're done, you can press enter, and there you have it. Your image has been cropped. You can select your move toolbar to exit the crop tool. So that's how you crop an image. So the next tool here is the image adjustment. And where do you find the image adjustment? If you go on the image menu bar, on the menu bar you find the image, and from the image you can find your adjustment. As some common tools, you have the brightness and contrast, used to adjust general light and dark balance, the hue or saturation, which is used to modify colors and intensity, the levels to adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights, the color balance at warmth or coolness to your image. So let's look at that real quick, the adjustments. So we said we go to image adjustments. These are all your adjustments here. This is brightness, levels, curves, exposure, brightness, a lot of different, all of them have its own features, have its own settings or effects, sorry, I said effects on the image. For example, if you choose brightness and contrast here, you can increase the brightness of your picture or decrease it. So your picture is too bright, you can come and decrease the brightness. If it's not bright enough, you can come and increase the brightness. Same with the contrast. See, when I increase the contrast, see how the image becomes. When I decrease it, so it becomes. So the contrast is simply the ratio of the light and dark spots, right? So when you increase the contrast, the dark part become more accentuated, right? And when you reduce it, everything kind of just blends in as one. So depending on the effects which you want to create on your picture, you have to adjust the brightness and contrast to a level which you feel is alright for you. And when you feel that it's alright, you can just simply press OK. The other image adjustments such as the levels. And what do we say levels are for? To adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights. So here you find these three cursors down here. I want to move this one here. See the image, how bright it becomes. I'll move this one, see it becomes darker. And if you maintain your hand on the R key and come on this and press click it. Okay, this one is the middle. See, as you move left to right, you can control the shadows and highlights in your image. And when you're done adjusting it to the way you want your image to look like, simply press on OK. So all these settings are being applied to your image. However, when you come here, what you notice is these effects are not being created on the layers panel, right? So this one here is called destructive editing because now we've added brightness, added levels. But now, what if we want to change the levels again? We can't because of a different. Okay, so they've been applied on the image. However, if we want to do a non-destructive editing, where we go to is down here in this section. You see this small circle here. You click on it, and these are all those things. This brightness and contrast, this levels, exposure. So everything which was found here in adjustment is also found here. The difference here now is once you use this section here, it creates a new layer. create a new layer. As you can see, a new layer has been created. So from here, if I decrease the brightness, for example, and notice that this image now has become too dark and I want to adjust it, I can simply come back to this layers here and click on this sun here. Simply come back and I can readjust it back. And if I'm not satisfied, if I don't want to put brightness anymore, I can simply click on this layer here and come down here and delete it. Delete, delete, delete. So do you understand now the difference between constructive and non and between destructive and non-destructive editing? So by making use of my layers here, I can do non-destructive editing, which permits me to always come back and control the settings which I've added on my image, which is different from when I come here and perform destructive editing, where all my settings be cannot be modified. So this call is going to be ending in 2 minutes. It's be ending in 2 minutes. I'm going to be sending a new link to the immediately as it ends. So once it ends, just go back to the group and rejoin. So we saw brightness, we saw levels, we didn't say hue. Let's look at the hue. So we can come down here on this circle, click and select hue and saturation. When you select hue and saturation, this panel here appears. And this panel here, you can select a color. You see, by changing this hue here, it completely changes all the colors on the image. So this here, in the middle here, is the balance color. So as I move it towards the blue here, see that the blue gets more bluer and the other colors have to change. I go towards the purple here, so the colors change towards the red, and like this. You can also increase saturation. Saturation simply has to do with the intensity of the colors. So here, when I increase the colors become more and more intense, or when I reduce it become less and less intense until it's completely black and white. So this call is about to end. So I'm going to be creating a new link immediately. So head to the group with a new link. Okay, so let's continue. Let me share the screen. So we're talking about image adjustments. So we're looking at on the hue and saturation before the current off. The hue and saturation is to modify colors and intensity. So we're showing how it actually does that. So when we move this bar here, it actually change the color. As we move from the blue to the pink to the red, the color and the image are being changed. And this is the balance here. You can also adjust it here. If you put zero, zero is the balance, the middle count. Is that this one at this point here, this is the colors exactly as it was taken. But when you move this bar here, it shifts the colors. Shift the colors, shift the colors. Here. Saturation increases the intensity of the colors. So as you increase the saturation, the intensity increases, and once you decrease saturation, the intensity reduces till it becomes black and white. So while editing your image, you want to adjust this setting depending on the image which you have at hand. So I will not tell you that, for example, the saturation at 30 or 50 because the image will be different from this one. So the quality of the image will vary depending on the type of camera which was used to take the picture, the environment, whether it had good lighting, whether it had bad lighting, was it in the day, was it in the night, was it inside the house, was it outside, the amount of lighting that was around. So all those factors impact the quality of the image. So there is no one specific setting which can give you all your images. So you have to adjust the settings depending on the image which you have at hand. You can also increase the lightness or the darkness of the picture. It is completely dark, it's completely white. So you adjust the settings depending on the image which you have at hand in order to create the desired effect. The next property, this adjustment is the color balance. The color balance, which we said the color balance is to add warmth or coolness. Let's look at that real quick. This color balance here. Color balance. Color balance. Just give me a sec. Okay, let's continue. Okay, let's continue where we stopped. We're on color balance. I will say the color balance adds warmth or coolness to the picture, to the image. So same thing with all the other ones. If you adjust the settings here, you can see the effect which goes in the picture. When I move the cyan towards more the cyan, it becomes cooler. And I move it towards the red, it becomes warmer. The magenta as well becomes cooler and warmer, becomes warmer with the yellow and cooler with the blue. So you can adjust the settings in order to create a particular effect. So look at how the image looks now and look at how it did before. So these are how these filters when you use for example when you use Snapchat or those or even your basic photo editing on your camera, that the filter section. So this is what these filters do. Simply they are just setting the color balance, the hue saturation. These are pre-made settings which they just make it and release it as filters which you can just add to your picture and see whether it matches. So there are other tools as well. We will not look at all of them right now, but you can explore them after this class. The vibrance, exposure, the black and white, the photo filter channel mixer. You can explore these tools. We're going to look at them as we continue with this course. But you can go ahead and explore them by yourself in advance. So now we're going to look at some retouching tools, such as the spot healing brush tool, which removes blemishes and dust. So let's take an example here. We're going to add another image. This is another image, an image with blemishes. For example, let's say this one. Okay, we're going to add it as a new image instead. It was a new image by dragging and dropping in this blank area here. So it's open as a new image. So we're talking about the spot healing brush tool. So if you come on your tools here, this is spot healing brush tool. Just here, if you right click the other alternatives, you can move over to the healing brush tool. We're going to use this one, the spot healing brush tool. You can also increase, just like with brushes, you can come up here and increase the size of the brush like this. So right now, if you come to your image and you zoom in and click on this, and adjust the size, so you see what it does. So you can use this tool in order to remove blemishes on your image. Like this, by simply clicking, adjusting the size of your brush and clicking the area with the blemish once. Just click once and this will automatically adjust the area. So you can zoom in for clarity to make the image more clear. So that's what the spot healing brush does. So if you look at him now, it looks a little less worse than it did at the start. So next thing is the clone stamp tool. The shortcut is the S key. It copies pixels from one area to another. So for this one, the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool copies pixels from one area to another. This is a clone stamp tool here. On your tool panel, this is it. Clone stamp tool. You can zoom in on a picture a little bit. And like I said, I provided a link to all these images. Provided a link. Let me resend it again. The link they are found here on the Google Drive. So here's the list all the images we'll be using. So you can download them to follow along. The link is in the chat. So we said the clone stamp tool, copies pixels from one area to another. So for example, you can copy pixels, for example, from this area of the skin and paste pixels on the other area of the skin. So define the source point, maintain your hand on Alt to define the source. So as I maintain my hand on Alt key, see how the cursor changes. So I can click like this. So now wherever now now I've clicked once, I've released my hand from the Alt key. So wherever now I'm going to click now with this cursor, it's going to copy the pixels from where I clicked this from and paste it there. Are you seeing how it follows? So I click now here. Look at this spot. Look at this spot now. So it now looks like this area where I copied it from. If I click like this again. Are you seeing? So it copied the pixels of this area which I took this point from and pasted it here. This can also be used in adjusting images, right, for in order to remove blemishes. For example, I can decide to copy pixels from here and decide to copy pixels from here. So to copy the pixels, you maintain your hand on the Alt key first. The cursor changes. You click where you want to copy your pixels from, for example here. Then you release your hand from Alt. Then you go where you want to paste the pixels and you can paint there, for example like this. So you have to use this tool depending on your image and what desired effects you want to produce. This can be also used to remove blemishes, to smoothen the skin by, by copying pixels from another portion of the skin and pasting it there. Let's look for example here. Let's copy these pixels here and paste it here. One thing you can also adjust with this is also your opacity of your brush. That is not too heavy. So you do this with regards to the image which you have in front of you and that effect which you're trying to produce. So the key takeaway is the clone stamp tool copies pixels from one portion of the screen and pastes it in another portion of the screen. And you can use this one to cover blemishes, dark spots by copying pixels from an area of the skin which is smooth and pasting it in that area of the skin which has the blemish or the dark spots. The patch tool to drag and replace method for retouching the patch tool. Let's look at the patch tool. The patch tool. So when you hold on the tool, right, a small instruction here appears which gives you some details about the tool. So it says replace the selected area with pixels from another part of the image. So for example, let's just do a small cutout of his nose like this. So are we there? If you're there, send a reaction. If you're following, send a reaction. Okay. I'm actually forgetting how to use the patch tool. But anyways, we'll come back to it. So when you're using these tools, you might want to zoom into your screen for 100% precision. So if you're trying to remove a particular spot, you might want to zoom in. I showed you how to zoom. You can press Ctrl plus on your keyboard or Ctrl and roll your mouse forward, your mouse wheel forward to zoom in, or roll it backward. By pressing the Alt key, not Control, and press Alt and roll your mouse forward to zoom in. Alt key and roll your mouse forward to zoom in. And press Alt and roll your mouse backward to zoom out. Or Control plus and Control minus on your keyboard to zoom in and zoom out. Or you can press the Z key to select this tool here, which is called the zoom tool, and simply click to other zoom, or you can change it here. You can select the plus here to zoom in and the negative to zoom out. In order to fine tune your selections. Okay, here are some non-destructive editing tips for you to keep. Always duplicate the original image layer. So if you're trying to do some editings on this image for example, it is best practice to come to your layers panel here and press the Alt key and click on this layer and drag it up. Just unlock it first. Maintaining on Alt key, you click and you drag it up to duplicate the layer. Or you can also right click on it and select duplicate layer. The reason why you're duplicating this layer is so that if you apply, so you can close other layers, for example. So mean that if you apply some editings here, some retouching here, let's say we use the spot revealing brush and remove some blemishes here. But in the end, we're not really happy with the result. We're really happy with the result. We can simply put up this layer and continue working on this one, right? So that's why you have to duplicate the layer in case of any mistake. Another tip is use adjustment layers instead of direct edits. As I told you before when I was telling you about the difference between coming to image here, selecting adjustments, and coming here. The difference here is this one creates a new layer, hence it's becoming a non-destructive editing adjustment. Whereas when you come to image here and do adjustments, the adjustment is directly being made on the image. So it is called destructive adjustment because you cannot modify these adjustments. The next step is use masks to hide or reveal parts of edit. So I've not really looked at the mask tool yet. I want to look at it soon. Save your PSD file with layers intact for future edits. So when you're done with your editing, save it as it is. Do not flatten your image because you click here, if you right click here and you look at okay, let's turn on all the layers. If you right click here, we see this option merge down. It's option to merge all your layers into one, or you see flatten, or you see flatten layers or flatten image somewhere around. So when you do this, when you merge it or you flatten it and save it as a PSD, you will not be able to come and edit the individual parts of your layers again. So let's do, like, for example, merge it. This one. Okay, let's add some adjustment layers in the in the middle, in between here. Add some contrast here and maybe some exposure here. So now if I now come now and select image visible or flash image, let's say image visible. So now I can no more come and modify that contrast layer which I added here or the exposure layer. That's why it is recommended not to flatten this image before saving to PSD. I will set PSD is the Photoshop editable file, which means that when you save as a PSD, you can always come back and edit it. But if you flatten this image like this, which will come back here, how will you adjust that exposure or that brightness which is supposed to be here? You cannot. These are some non-destructive editing tips, things you should avoid doing while you're editing your images or your flyers. So use masks to hide or reveal parts of edit. So in the previous video, when we were moving the background of an image, okay, let's go back to that. Yes, let's go back here. So in this video, I showed you how to remove the background from this image. I will set, when we're removing this background, there's an option called select and mask, and a new layer was created with this black part of this image like this. And so that this small box here is called the mask, meaning that was the background which was on this image before was not deleted, it was simply hidden. And this is it. It was removed from the image and kept as a separate part. This is the image here. This is the image here. This is the boy here, and here is the background. So this dark part here is the background. Okay, so would you like us to go over how to remove the background of an image again? Okay, so let's go back. Let's remove the background of an image all over again for those who were not there last class. Let's just go back to our new file. We're going to do it on this file here, on this one. Let's just turn up this adjustment layers. So now you've added your image on Photoshop. This is your image, you've added it already. This image has appeared here. This is it here. But now you want to remove the background. Let's just turn this here. Okay, let me show you something. Here, right, in this small area is your history. And then you can come here and see history of what you've been doing since you opened this file. And you can also go back to the original file as it was when you opened it, or go back to a specific point in editing journey using this one here, the history, this tool, the history tool. So let's go back to the beginning as it was when we opened this file. So now what we want to do is to remove the background. So make sure that only this subject remains, and we're going to remove this background here. The image as I see was provided in the Google Drive link so you can access it. So now the first thing we'll do is we'll make sure this layer of the image is selected, so we know we're dealing with this particular image. This is in case you have many images on your layers. In this case, only this one. But in case you have many images, make sure the particular image you want to remove the background is the one selected by clicking on that layer. So the next thing we want to do now is come here and select this tool here called the quick selection tool. Click on the quick selection tool. And once you click on the quick selection tool, these options here are going to appear: select subject and select and mask. So you click on select subject, and push it to automatically cut out this man from this image. So these lines which appear like this are called matching ants. And Photoshop automatically creates this in order to cut out the subject in your image. But if you want to notice, some parts are not perfect. This top part, the head was not well selected. So now how do we adjust this? That's why we select this tool. So if you come up here, you see plus and minus. You see plus and minus. So you can zoom in to this image. When minus is selected, you can, if you click from the outside, if you minus selected, you click from the outside and push this line inward like this. You can increase the size of your brush by coming here. Mine is set to 1. Let me increase it. It's too small. Let me increase the size to like 5 or 12. Okay, I think it's too big. Let's reduce it again. Okay, 5. So you can control the size of your brush here. Then you can come back to your image. When it's minus, simply means you can click from outside and push it inside. And plus means from inside and push it outside. This is minus to arrange the selection because we want to make sure the head is well selected. So we click from outside and push it inside like this. So we look for the other part of the adjustments. We look for the other part of the image and adjustments. We go down, we look. Come here, can reduce the size a little bit. Select the plus here. Okay, negative instead, and push it a little bit inside to fine tune the selection. So you go through your image and look for spots where it was not well selected, like down here. This part here was not well selected. I'm going to select the plus and push it a little bit outside like this so the shoe can be better selected. So to push it like this, I left click, maintain my hand on the left button and push gently like this. So as I'm pushing, it is adjusting, 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 adjusting. So you do this in order to fine tune your selection in order to get the best cutout possible. So once you've checked your image and everything seems to be okay, So a shortcut in order to change from plus to minus by maintaining your hand on the Alt key. When I maintain my hand on the Alt key, it changes from plus to minus. When I move my hand on the Alt key, it goes back to plus, the shortcut. So once you've checked and everything is okay, the next thing you do is you click here, select and mask. Select and mask. This panel on your right is going to appear. So you notice that our image now has no background. But however, it's not yet perfect. So now to fine tune this selection again even more, so we'll come here on this view mode here, select onion skin. Select onion skin as your view mode. And you can come and adjust these settings here. Now these settings here will depend on the image which you have at hand. So it's not the same for all images. So you can increase the smoothness. You increase the smoothness, is going to make the borders sharper. So look at how it looks like now. So if I reduce it, this is how it looks like. So in these settings, right, no matter what, you don't want to overload the settings. It's going to destroy your image. So just have to add a little bit so and check whether it matches desired results. If you put too much, it's going to spoil the image. Use a feather. Feather acts like a blurred radius at the borders. So you add feathers a lot, see how the borders are blurred out and become transparent. So you don't want to add this in too much if you're adding feathers. I'm not going to add any feather in this image. So you can check the contrast as well. So when I fill the contrast with max, you see the edge has become sharper. But that's too sharp. Let's reduce it to let's reduce at 5% like this. And the next setting here is decontaminate colors. Decontaminate colors. So I'm just going to decontaminate colors. Look at my edges. Look at the difference without decontaminate edges, without decontaminate colors and with. So the edges, so decontaminate color simply adds another line of color. So it takes the color from the subject, right? From the outline of the subject and adds another line of color in order to fill this outside part of your subject. So to correct the edges, right? Correct the edges of your subject. Or you move it to a different. But this is not always usable. So you have to check on your image if this actually matches to the other because sometimes adding the contaminant color instead spoils the image. So when you put it on, try to verify. You can also adjust the amount here. I'm going to put mine at around 75%. So now the output, when you can just drop down here, different outputs. You have new layer with layer mask, new document with layer mask. So the option we're going to go for here is a new layer with layer mask. So this option here is going to create a new layer and is going to mask the background. So this new layer here, if you select a new layer, it's simply going to create a new layer with this subject but no background. New layer with layer mask create a new layer with a subject, but now the background is being hidden in a way that you can always come and put it back when you want. New document will create an entirely new document. So an entirely new document will be created here. You select new document. And you select new document layer mask. A new document will be created with a layer mask. With a layer mask. Okay, so for this we're going to use new layer with layer mask. As we want to conserve the background. You just want to hide it. You don't want to delete it. So click this option here. And you press on OK. So if you notice on your layer panel now, you start this the original image was duplicated. A new image was formed, but this image now has its background masked. So the background is still there, but it's just simply like hidden. So here's the image here with no background. So if you follow this step, then you would have successfully moved the background for this image. So you can follow this step to move the background from any image to the same step. So if I come down here and I put this layer back on, which is that the image is still there, it's just off. And now why do we do this? Why do we do layer with layer mask? First of all, it's a non-destructive edit in a way that this background can be added back or removed. So, but how do we do that now? So if you go on towards the left side of your screen, you see these two boxes, the black and the white. The first thing we do is we come back up here and select our brush tool. You click on the brush tool. Last time I said the brush tool is used to paint. It's used to paint. But in this case now, what we'll be painting is not a color, but we'll be painting the image itself. So we select the black color and copy this image here and start painting. See what happens. We are painting, the selection out of the image. So you can use it to create an effect. Sometimes you see designs where the subject is kind of disappearing at some point on the screen, right? So this can be used to do that. You can decrease the opacity, for example, and okay, let's decrease a little bit more, like this. So I create a sort of disappearing effect on the lower layer like this. So it's like it slowly disappears. Another way, let's press Control Z to undo everything.
Come on.
If you come back here, Mr. Brandon, please could you mute your mic? Mute your mic. Okay. So if you come down here now and switch these two colors together, you can switch them by clicking on this icon. If you switch them off and come back and you paste back on this image, let you notice that now instead of painting on the subject, be painting let's say this one. We select on our mask here, our mask. Instead now you can actually paint the background. Are you seeing? Make sure you put your opacity back to 100. No, you're not actually see. My opacity was set back to 0. That's why I was painting. I was not seeing what was happening. To start now, using this, you can paint your background as if you're painting it with a color by switching these two colors here. When I use the black, I'll be painting on my subject. I'll be painting on the subject, right? But when I use the white, I'll be painting it back like this. So there are different ways which you can use this, which we'll be seeing as we move forward. There are different ways you can apply this in order to make your design look better or create some certain effects on your design. So the masking option helps you control what you actually remove or what actually let after removing your background. Another way you can also use your masking option is when you're doing your adjustment layers. Your masking options can actually control in what particular area of the image which you want to add a particular adjustment. So for example, let's say I want to add this adjustment, add a saturation adjustment layer, right? So I'm going to click on this white space here, on this white. This white space here is the mask. I'm going to select our brush tool. First of all, come back here. Let's increase saturation to 100, for example. I want to click here, right? Select our brush tool and come and paint here. You see. So now, when we're painting now, I'm moving this saturation. See, so we can now control where exactly saturation is being applied using our mask tool. So add the saturation, but however, camera can have no saturation on the trace. So only now, only this portion of the trace is saturated. So that is the advantage of the mask. So you see my mask, you can see traces of the part that I removed. So that's another part of non-destructive editing. With the mask tool, you can control which part, which specific part of your image is being affected by a particular setting or by a particular adjustment. So, okay, so is everything understood? Is there anything which isn't clear? Okay, so let's move on to the discussion session. So the first question is, why is it better to work with layers than directly on the image? You can send your answers in the chat. Why is it better to work with layers than directly on the image? Type your answers in the chat. Yes, because you can easily undo an action. It's better to work with layers because it is non-destructive. You can easily modify, change, remove, add other options, right? So what you already did. For example, for the saturation, you can come back and increase it, reduce it, remove it. So you can edit what you have done already. But when you add directly on the image, you cannot edit it. Once you've added it, it's done. The only way is you have to delete the image and do it back. So that was excellent, Faith. So next question, how does DPI affect your design for print versus digital? Remember what we said about DPI? Let's come back to that slide. Is a dots per inch. So 72 DPI for screen and 300 DPI for print. So the question here is, how does DPI affect your design for print versus digital? How does a dot per inch affect your design for screen or for digital? Type your answer in the chat. Type your answer in the chat. Okay, okay. It's just you and I left here. So the dots per inch. So the pixel carries a single dot of color, right? So the bigger the pixel is carrying a single color, the lesser the quality of design is going to be. So you said in screens you want to use 72 dpi for dots per inch, and on print you want to use 300 dpi, because the higher the dpi, the sharper your image will be. And when you're printing, you want it to come out in the best of quality, so you have to increase the resolution. Because when you're printing, the machine you're using to print also matters a lot. So the reason why you're also putting that in so high is so that even if the machine is not really good, it still gets a very good output. So imagine you already putting your DPI low and you're going to put it on a low quality machine again. So you can imagine how your output is going to look like. So next thing is, what are the benefits of non-destructive editing? I think we've answered this over and over. Yes, can easily replace, edit, undo. Exactly. And how can simple edits improve a social media post performance? How do you think a simple edit can improve a social media post performance? Why do we do all these edits? What do you think? Yes, it becomes more attractive and more appealing. Exactly. It makes the image or the visual more attractive and more appealing, more creativity packed. Exactly, exactly. So yeah, you've understood everything. So here is the practice activity. I'm going to okay, edit a portrait photo using Photoshop to prepare it for professional profile. Crop image using rule of thirds. Remove background, spots or blemishes. Adjust brightness and contrast. Apply subtle color correction and save as both PSD and JPEG or JPG. Have you gotten the assignment? So in that um, in that Google Drive link which I provided to you, okay, let me just show you the image which you're going to work on. Alright, let me see which one. So you're going to work on this picture, this one. Are you seeing on this picture? And okay, this one. Yes, this one with the blemishes. This one too. this picture, this one, this picture as well, and this one as well, this three. So what you have to do is to make them more visually appealing by applying all what you've learned so far. So is everything clear? Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Are you still there, Faith? At what point were you lost? Okay. So this particular one was recorded, successfully recorded, unlike the other ones which failed. So you'll be able to go over it again. Go over it again. That's what I was explaining about moving the background and using the sports healing brush. So you'll be able to go over it again. This meeting is going to expire in 4 minutes. Wait a minute, not expire. So I'm going to provide the recording, okay? So you can go through it again. Okay, I succeed in recording this thing.